Breaking news coming in the last half hour. A Tatarstan air company Boeing 737 jet we're hearing has crashed while making a second attempt to land at Kazan airport in central Russia. You can see where Kazan is on the map there. We're now hearing all 50 passengers and crew have been killed on that plane. Details are still pretty sketchy, but they're still coming through. Emergency officials say there was some kind of explosion as that plane tried to land. The flight number, so far unconfirmed, but this is the best we have so far. We're just getting pictures through now from the crash scene, as you can see. We think the flight number is flight U9363, a Tatarstan Airlines flight that originated from Moscow's Domodedovo airport earlier on today. Early indications suggest there was a technical problem with that aircraft and there were cockpit errors showing. That's what the emergency services are saying via the Interfax news agency. As I was mentioning earlier on, the Russian aviation industry, of course, got a fair bit of bad press, especially in the last 10 years. Every time a crash had happened, most of the time it had been happening with a Soviet-era plane, most notably maybe a Tupolev 154, which is one of the Russian workhorses of the sky in its days. They've all been pretty much phased out now by most of the companies. If you ever travel to Russia, you'll see very few of them. Most companies now use Western planes, Boeings or Airbuses. In fact, the Boeing 737 is the best-selling jet airliner in the history of aviation. Production of that model was launched by the company back in 1967. If you travel at all by air, I'm sure you've been on one yourself. The worst crash here in Russia involving this type of jet happened in the city of Perm back in 2008. Then all 88 souls on board there sadly perished. Of course, another similar plane, Airbus A319, A320, A321 is the same sort of size, but now we're hearing that this Boeing 737 tonight from Tatarstan Airlines has crashed while making a second attempt to land at Kazan airport in central Russia. We think there were 50 passengers and crew on board that have been killed. A few pictures now coming through from the scene, as you can see on your screen. This is the first time I've seen them myself. You can see, I think, the fuselage of the plane, and it's obviously dark. I think there's foam down. You can see some emergency crews, a fire engine. And that's the only picture we've got so far from the news wires. But really bad news to hear, 50 people dead there. We don't know if anyone was affected on the ground at all, but it does look like all crew and all passengers on that flight have perished tonight. If you're worried about any friends or loved ones that you may have had on that flight that originated from Moscow tonight, the best we can say so far is that it was flight number U9363, a Tatarstan Airways plane. But that flight number still has to be substantiated. You can see the website address there. It's tatarstan.aero if you want to check it out yourself. Tatarstan.aero. Keep abreast with this story, of course, from us throughout the course of the night. The actual official name, I've been calling them Tatarstan Airways, Tatarstan Airlines. The actual official name of that airline is the Tatarstan Air Company. Now, emergency officials say there was an explosion as flight U9363 tried to land, and they're saying there was a technical problem with that aircraft as it was coming into land. We think it could have been showing some cockpit errors, maybe the wrong height, maybe the wrong speed. We don't know that. I'm just saying that. That's all we've got through so far. We've got a new update now. In the last minute on the news lines, I just mentioned the death toll. It's been rejigged again. New data now showing 52 have died. That's occurred according now to emergency ministry officials. 52 have died. I think we've got Yuri Karash, a Russian aviation expert, on the line. Yuri, hi there. No, we'll be going to him in just a little while. OK, I'll be going to him in just a little while. You're watching RT. My name's Kevin Owen. Thank you for being with us. Unfortunate news, as I say, to bring you from Kazan. The details are still very sketchy, but we're obviously the station to keep you fully abreast of this. We are RT, originating from Moscow, broadcasting around the world. Our thoughts very much with the family and friends of everyone who appear to have perished here tonight. Now, I'm just hearing we do have Yuri Karash, Russian aviation expert, on the line now. Yuri, hi there. Thanks for coming on the line at really short notice. It's Kevin Owen you're talking to. Hi there. From what we know, any idea of what could have caused the crash? I'm reporting that there was some technical problem. The emergency services are saying, very early days this of course, but they're saying that there were cockpit errors. I mean, that leaves it very wide open though, doesn't it, of course?
Well, first we have to know why did the crew decide to go around. Was it because of technical malfunction? Was it because of weather condition? Was it something else? Maybe crew incapacitation? Well, this is probably the least possible reason. Well, however, we have to know for sure why did it have to change its flight pattern. And if it was a technical malfunction, what kind of technical malfunction was it? Was it a mechanical malfunction, or did something happen to the navigation equipment of the aircraft? And providing that in nowadays most airlines do exercise semi-automatic or fully automatic landing, maybe the problem with navigation equipment did lead to the crash.
What do we know about Kazan airport? What kind of airport is it? I don't know if you've ever flown into it yourself. Is it a difficult airport to navigate? What sort of safety equipment does it have?
Well, I wouldn't call it really a difficult airport. As far as I know, airplanes could land Category 3 in this airport, meaning that they could exercise almost zero vision landing.
And what about Tatarstan Air Company? What's that kind of company like? I've seen them at Domodedovo myself before. I think previously they were using the Soviet-era planes. I'm talking more like the old-style Tupolev 154s, maybe the 134s, a short to medium-range plane. They're all now using, all the Soviet, ex-Soviet companies, the new Russian companies, are using modern Western planes, aren't they? I mean, I guess they're maintained to the standards that they have to be maintained to by civil aviation law and Russian civil aviation law, yeah?
Well, you know, I'm not really familiar with Tatarstan Airlines, and just knowing that it operates Boeing 737 is not enough to make an assessment of the technical health of this airline, because as we know, D737 has been manufactured since the mid-60s of the last century. So if it operates, if Tatarstan Airlines operates B737, it doesn't mean that it is a brand new aircraft. It's maybe 10, 15, or maybe even 20-year-old aircraft, and nobody knows how it was maintained.
But if it's properly maintained, there's no reason to think that there'd be any problem with it. I mean, you know, you often talk to people in the Army, the Air Force particularly. They say they'd much sooner fly on older planes that are better service than brand new ones, don't they often?
Well, you know, there is Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will. And unfortunately, sometimes it happens to civil aircraft as well. Well, however, we can only hope that the aircraft was properly maintained. And probably it was, but we have to wait for the results of the investigation.
I mean, it's all early days, this, and it's just assumptions that we're talking about because, you know, the details are still coming through. Again, I say, you know, our thoughts very much with the family, friends and loved ones of everyone who appears to have perished here tonight. Absolutely. You talked about a Category 3. To the uninitiated, especially me, what does that mean when you're talking about a Category 3 landing? And we don't know what the weather was like there.
Category 1, Category 2, and Category 3. And Category 3 means that the aircraft does exercise a fully automatic landing without any. Yes, hello?
Hello, yes, we can still hear
you. Well, are you with me?
Yes, I am, yes. You were explaining what a Category 3 landing was,
Category 3, you know, I don't really want to go into technical details not to burden the listeners with all this technical stuff. But it's enough to say that when aircraft lands Category 3, it means that it lands with zero visibility, and the crew actually does not. It's not right to say that the crew does not control the aircraft. Of course, it does, but the landing is exercised by the onboard automatic landing equipment, and the crew is just monitoring this equipment.
So even if there had been bad weather there, in theory, we think that airport should have been able to cope with it, that plane should have been able to cope with it and landed basically automatically, okay, still with the pilots in control.
Let me tell you something. Actually, yes, a Category 3 could ensure landing at zero visibility, but there is a part of the flight called flare when actually the aircraft levels up just before the landing. So when the aircraft is about to land, the crew has to monitor very carefully the indications of the onboard equipment. So, and if for some reason they see indication no flare, they should immediately exercise go-around procedure, otherwise they will crash land.
Well, as you've been talking, Yuri, you know, as the news has been coming in about this over the last 40 minutes or so, first of all, we heard there were 2 attempted landings. Now, Russian aviation officials are saying there were 3 attempts to land. Now, we don't know why this would have been, but surely it should raise some alarm bells. Surely if there's been 1 attempted touchdown, 2 attempted touchdowns, then we're talking about 3. Is that normal?
It doesn't make any sense. You know, when I was flying, if I didn't, for some reason, if I didn't succeed twice, I would certainly go to another airport. And the aircraft should have enough fuel on board to go to the other airport, okay? So for me, it doesn't really make sense why the aircraft was making 3 attempts to land. And moreover, I just heard on the news that the aircraft did in fact try to land only once. There was only 1 landing attempt. So the information is very confusing at this point.
Absolutely.
Very confusing and contradictory.
And we're hearing again, those poor souls that have perished tonight, 46 passengers, we think, on board, 6 crew. That's a total of 52 who we believe have died in this crash. No mention of anyone maybe on the ground that may have been caught up in this, because we think the crash took place at the airport rather than within the city itself. Could you just tell us, for people unfamiliar, where Kazan City Airport is? Is it close to the city? I mean, is it close to a built-up area or not? Do you know?
No, well, not really. I think it's about maybe 10-15 kilometers from the city. So it's actually it's beyond the city's outskirts. So I don't think that the people living in the city were in any danger.
And when they talk about 6 crew being on board, I guess that would have been the standard configuration with this kind of plane with, I guess, a pilot, a co-pilot, no navigator, because it's a modern plane, and 4 stewardesses, yeah?
Well, maybe there was a 3rd crew member in the cockpit, somebody who was who was getting training to fly Boeing 737. So it could have happened. I mean, it could have happened, you know. So.
Take us through. I'd just like to keep you on the line if I can for a minute. I know we're just pushing facts around. A lot of this is still unknown, but we can talk about the Boeing 737 still for viewers that are just joining us. Well, we're trying to get some more information in as well about what's happened here. The 737 inherently, we've called it the workhorse of the skies, but it really is, isn't it? I mean, at any one time, there are at least 1,200 of these planes in the sky. Most of any of us that have travelled at any time have probably been on one. They're extremely safe planes, aren't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. Boeing 737, it's almost like DC-3 nowadays. It is a very safe and very reliable aircraft.
Do you know, we're actually getting some details in now. I'm just keeping across the news lines here. We're hearing preliminary version of what could have gone wrong here, because we were hearing that there was some sort of data malfunction in the cockpit. We're also hearing that there was some technical problem, but now we're hearing that a preliminary version of what has happened here could be that it was a crew mistake. And I guess even, it's very early days and we don't know this for sure, but that's the preliminary thought at the moment from the investigating teams. Of course, even the best trained pilots, co-pilots, sometimes when they're faced with circumstances they hadn't planned for, it can catch them out, can't it? No matter where they are around the world, no matter how well trained they are.
Yes, absolutely. And according to the world statistics, 50% of the aircraft incidents happened because of the human error. Unfortunately, in Russia, it raises up to 80% once in a while. Well, sometimes. Because besides, you have to understand that there is no such thing as a homogeneous Russian civil aviation. There are airlines like Aeroflot, which is among the 50 safest airlines in the world. There is Transire, which is also a fairly good airline. There is S7, and then there are dozens, if not hundreds, of smaller airlines, and nobody knows how well do they maintain their
surely
fleet.
Surely the Russian aviation authorities, we know they've got strict controls in place. These airlines are monitored. Surely not. I mean, Tatarstan Airlines is a very well-known airline.
Well, I certainly hope that the aircraft was well maintained, and then unfortunately we'll have to assume that there was some mistake made by my colleagues.
Talking in the past, as we're looking at the pictures, we've got very few pictures coming through. Yuri, please stay with us if you would. Just looking at the picture on the screen now, the first one we've got through, we're seeing what appears to be in the darkness there. I think it's a little bit of the fuselage of the plane. It doesn't look like, again, from the little bit I can see, and viewers at home, you're seeing what I'm seeing. It doesn't look like there's been a severe fire, but I may be very wrong. That might just be a part of it that's separated away. You're seeing the fire crews there. You're seeing foam on what I think is the runway. We don't even know if it's crash landed on the runway or veered off it. Again, looking at those pictures, what could have been done, do you think? Is there anything that the rescue teams could have been done when you're faced with something like that? There's very little you can do end of the day, Yuri, is there? I mean, a plane crashes, OK, they can come there to put the fire out as quickly as possible, but it's all down to, if there are any survivors on a plane, it's all down to getting them off as quickly as possible. I suppose that's when the rescue and the fire crews really swing into action, isn't it?
Absolutely, and as far as I can see, there was neither big fire nor explosion on board the aircraft. Although when there is a fuel spillage, you may always assume that there will be fire. But thank God, apparently it was not the case with B737, which crashed in Kazan. Although unfortunately, it would not really make any difference because all on board perished anyway. Yeah,
we're saying that there were 46 passengers there, 6 crew. Of course, the only tiny saving grace here, and it is a very small saving grace, is that, of course, there were no more passengers on there, because a Boeing 737 could take, what, 100 or more passengers, couldn't it, if it's full? Of course it could.
Well, it depends on the modifications. Some of Boeing 737 modifications could accommodate up to 200 passengers.
Yeah.
But I don't. But you know, these are the most advanced and the newest models of Boeing 737, so I don't think that Tatarstan Airlines operated such versions of B737. So it was probably somewhere in between. Maybe it was an aircraft designed to carry 120, 120 or 140 passengers, not more.
Got you. Yuri, we're ever so grateful for you coming on the line. Sorry we only seem to speak to you when there's a disaster happening, as appears to be unfolding tonight there in Kazan Airport. Thank you very much for your time. Yuri Karash, aviation expert.